The common theme of the readings from Genesis and Matthew that we read earlier is forgiveness. In fact, forgiveness is a central theme of the life of Christian discipleship. We pray the same prayer every Sunday, specifically asking God to forgive us something. Here it's our debts, but in other churches and traditions it's trespasses or sins, and pledging that we will in turn offer forgiveness to others. One of the principal ways the church over the centuries has understood the meaning of the life and ministry, but especially the death and resurrection of Jesus, is that they make available to us the forgiveness of sins that have created a barrier between us and God. But if we go beyond these theological and churchy emphases, we find that forgiveness is an essential element in any human relationship. Given our nature as at least occasionally deceitful and self-centered persons who sometimes act thoughtlessly or even in a deliberately hurtful manner, the need for forgiveness and reconciliation looms large. Apart from forgiveness, relationships can and will become irreparably they can't be repaired, irreparably broken. But as our sinfulness builds barriers between us and God, it also creates obstacles between us and our human relationship partners. And unless we do something to eliminate those barriers, they will keep growing until they become all but insurmountable. Archbishop Desmond Tutu, seeking to lead the people of South Africa out of the apartheid era without catastrophic bloodshed and everlasting enmity between the races, believed so strongly in the necessity of forgiveness that he wrote a book on the subject. He called it No Future Without Forgiveness. Whether we look at it theologically or simply on a human level, forgiveness is a big deal. What we may sometimes fail to recognize, especially if we look at examples of forgiveness in popular culture, such as books, movies, songs, and even on occasion a sermon or two, is just how hard forgiveness is to accomplish. It is rarely clean and tidy the way it often is on the big screen. In fact, the road to true forgiveness and reconciliation is a tortuous one, with many hairpin turns, switchbacks, and detours. Sometimes we come a long way only to find a sign saying that the bridge is out. And the potholes. Sometimes forgiveness highway resembles the road that I once traveled in South Sudan with a bus full of singing orphans, something that in itself required some forgiveness, where our speed on that 20-mile trip may have topped out at a blistering 15 miles an hour, and where the paved or gravel portion of the road was nothing more than a brief diversion from the ridges and canyons that were the road of true character. Sometimes forgiveness is like that. In different ways, both the reading from Matthew and the one from Genesis do acknowledge that forgiveness is not a neat one-off action that ends with the former adversaries walking arm in arm into the sunset and live happily ever after. Both passages force us to face the truth that reconciliation is not easy. And for it to take lasting effect, we must put in some hard work, repetitive work, and learn to see things from a different perspective. On the heels of Jesus' instructions about how disciples are to handle conflicts, and his declaration that whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed on heaven, Peter brings up a practical question about life in the community. He is probably trying both to demonstrate that he understands what Jesus has been trying to teach them, and to make up for the embarrassing episode from a few chapters before, when he misunderstood Jesus' meaning so badly that Jesus calls him Satan. So I guess we should give him credit for making an effort, give it the old college try. But once again, poor old Pete comes up short. He asks, Lord, if another member of the community sins against me, how often should I forgive? As many as, and here he pauses for effect, expecting his fellow disciples, if not Jesus himself, to be appropriately impressed with his magnanimity. 7 times? 3 times to forgive the same debt or offense, probably the gold standard, but Peter cranks it up all the way to 7. He knows Jesus' habit of raising the standard from what is expected, so he does his best to get the jump on it. 7 times. He looks around the group with an air of smugness. What do you think of that, sucker? But once again, Peter has failed to get it. 7 is the divine number of perfection, of completeness. So by raising the bar to that level, he appears to be looking for a quantified and transactional limit to the obligation to forgive. 3 times is hard, and 7 will be that much harder, but surely there is a point at which I can stop trying. I can stop bothering. I can write that person off, unfriend her on Facebook, and move on with my life. Forgiving someone 7 times must surely absolve me of further responsibility, right? Jesus' answer sticks a pin in Peter's balloon. Not 7 times, I tell you, but 77 times. You can almost hear the hiss of escaping air as Peter once again realizes that he has missed the point. Jesus does not choose the number 77 randomly or simply to pile on to Peter's already bruised ego. He takes it from a story from the 4th chapter of Genesis, in which one of Cain's descendants, a cat named Lamech, boasts about how he just shot a man in Reno just to watch him die. No, wait, that's Johnny Cash. Lamech's excuse is not much less lame, however. I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for striking me. If Cain is avenged 7-fold, then Lamech truly 77-fold. After Cain kills his brother Abel, God puts some kind of mark on him to protect him from revenge attacks. This divine tattoo is supposed to warn anyone who seeks to harm Cain that 7-fold vengeance will follow. Lamech dramatically ups the ante. He warns anyone who would come after him that his clan will avenge him with an utterly incommensurate response. They will kill 77 of their enemies for every death on their side. It's a recipe for an endlessly escalating cycle of reprisals and violence. But what Jesus does is he turns Lamech's 77-fold vengeance on its head. And he tells Peter he must be ready to forgive 77 times. Commentator Stanley Saunders puts it this way: Jesus is calling his community of disciples to participate in undoing the curse of Cain and Lamech that has kept their offspring trapped in spasms of envy, hatred, violence, and retribution across the generations to this day. 77 is not meant to be taken literally, of course. It's Jesus' way of telling Peter and the others that there must be no limits to their willingness to forgive. Like Nigel Tufnell's amps in the movie This Is Spinal Tap, Jesus' scales of forgiveness go to 11. His answer to Peter is also a sobering reminder that some hurts must be forgiven over and over again. Not because the offender keeps repeating the offense, but because the original damage was so deep that the aftershocks continue to reverberate for years, sometimes for a lifetime. Even after the offender has departed from our lives permanently through distance or death, for our own sanity and emotional wellness, we must continue to forgive. My father died 10 years ago. His name is on one of my cards. Joseph learns this lesson the hard way. He has more reasons than most to hold a grudge, considering all that has happened to him since that fateful day when his brothers sold him into slavery, but he knows better. He recognizes the danger of giving in to either self-pity or the desire for revenge. He knows that, tempting as they are, those feelings will do nothing but rob him of more than he has already lost. It takes discipline, tenacity, in no small measure of hopefulness, all the more remarkable because of the hopeless situations in which he keeps landing. But he finally manages to let go of those feelings and get on with his life. And he has to keep letting go of them. He has to keep coming back to the shredder. After toying for a while with the idea of exacting revenge on his brothers, he decides to forgive them. When he first reveals his identity, he has to reassure his brothers that he is not out to get them. He says this, "I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now there has been famine in the land, and for the next 5 years there will not be plowing or reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So then it was not you who sent me here, but God." This is a major turning point for Joseph. He rounds the corner from the vague but still enticing desire for revenge into a magnanimous spirit of forgiveness. He has compassion on the brothers who showed no compassion to him, and as a result, a family is reunited. Joseph sins for his father and brings him down to Egypt with his whole household, and Jacob gets to see again the son he thought was lost forever. Peace is restored. Reconciliation is achieved. But the brothers aren't so certain. Just like us, when we receive forgiveness for some offense, but can't be sure that the offended party isn't simply waiting for us to slip up again so she can zap us, Joseph's brothers are afraid that his declaration that all is forgiven is only in effect temporarily. Now that Jacob is dead, they start to get nervous again. And who knows, but maybe they're right. Maybe Joseph has been having second thoughts about this whole reconciliation thing. He still recalls what they did to him, after all, and it still burns. He needs forgiveness that goes to 11. So the brothers send word to him in their father's name, asking him to assure them that he has indeed forgiven and forgotten. And just to be on the safe side, they throw themselves down before him once again and offer to become his slaves. Joseph's response is telling, and it echoes what he said earlier. He says, "Don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. So don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children." Joseph has learned some hard lessons in his life. Lessons about jealousy, treachery, and the way things work out here in the real world. But he's also learned about self-discipline, faith, maybe a little late, but humility, and hope in the face of hopelessness. And he is learning the power of forgiveness. His brothers have been nearsighted, letting their envy and resentment get the better of them and rashly trying to take care of the problem through violence and deceit. We often suffer from astigmatism, letting the hurts we have suffered blur our vision so that we never really recover from them and never learn to see life again with hope and faith. But Joseph has developed 50-20 vision. Look again at Genesis 50:20. Joseph says, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." That's 50-20 vision. Seeing the events and circumstances of your life in such a way that even in the darkest, most trying times, you can find God at work, trying to bring about something good. Which reminds me a lot of Romans 8:28, which reads in one translation, "And we know that in all things God works for good of those who love him, who have been called according to God's purpose." But 8:28 vision doesn't have the same ring to it as 50-20 vision does. To say that God works in all things for good is to understand that God is on our side. When the going gets tough, God gets going on our behalf. That's the attitude Joseph has learned to develop. In spite of all his trials, in spite of the ever-present temptation to give up on God the way God seems by all accounts to have given up on him, he doesn't. Genesis 50:20 tells us that he figures out somewhere along the way that God has been at work all along to bring about some good. God didn't ordain the mud and the mess of Joseph's circumstances, but God takes it and sculpts it into a work of art. God takes the sow's ear of Joseph's life and fashions it into a silk purse. God turns the trash into a treasure. Choose your own metaphor. I like that outlook. It gives me hope that my sufferings, as slight as they may be in comparison to Joseph's, may not be the last word. They may be redeemable. And I can possibly even come to believe the assertion the Bible makes that God is love. I don't have to be afraid of a God who is unequivocally on my side. As the Apostle Paul says a few verses further down in Romans 8:31, if God is for us, who can be against us? We've all had experiences we wish we had never had. We've all done and said things we regret and had others do and say things to us that we find hard to forgive. We all have suffered in one way or another. We have all caused someone else to suffer in one way or another. When those things happen, we have a choice to make. Will we allow our short-sightedness to make us resentful and bitter, rendering us incapable of any positive action? Or will we develop 50-20 vision, the kind of vision that sees God at work at all times to bring about something good from the bad circumstances of our lives? To develop this kind of vision, we will have to do the hard work of forgiving, as Joseph did. We'll have to set aside the hostility we have harbored, nurtured, even depended on for years. That's this one. In some cases, our bitterness toward those who have wronged us may have become the central focus of our lives, our emotional and spiritual lives. And at the very least, they represent a barrier between us and the other person and between us and God. As Jesus makes clear in his parable of the unforgiving slave, we can't worship and serve the God who has forgiven us all our debts and at the same time keep a running account of the debts others owe us. Forgiveness, I'm not going to lie to you, forgiveness is not easy to do. And we have to keep doing it again and again if we want it to stick. To make it part of the warp and woof of our lives. That's why our forgiveness has to go to 11. So forgive and keep on forgiving. Seek forgiveness and keep on seeking it. Keep on receiving God's forgiveness, which is always there for the asking. As Paul puts it, I am convinced that neither death nor life, neither the present nor the future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord. May we learn to accept that as the truth.